Welcome to the MUSC Flood Resilience Update, part of the Conversation Cafe series. My name is John Brooker, and I'm with MUSC Sustainability. We work on a variety of initiatives across campus, including recycling and waste management, energy and water, food, transportation, climate, and green building. And if you want to hear about more events like this and opportunities for involvement, you can join our newsletter at musc.edu/gogreen or follow us on social media and also on Yammer. We have two presenters today. Christine von Kolnitz is the Sustainability Manager for the Medical University of South Carolina. Christine is an accredited commercial energy manager and a South Carolina DHEC certified recycling professional. Upon graduating with a BA degree from the College of Charleston in 1992, Christine worked as the recycling coordinator for the college. While there, she was instrumental in establishing the South Carolina DHEC Collegiate Recycling Grant Program. Christine became the first recycling coordinator for MUSC in 1995, and then the first sustainability manager in 2005. In 2018, Christine was appointed to the City of Charleston Resiliency and Sustainability Advisory Committee. Christine was appointed to the City of Charleston Green Committee in 2007 and served as the chair of its Recycling and Solid Waste Subcommittee until May 2012. In 2004, she co-wrote a recycling book titled Recycling and Beyond, a college campus primer. She is a member of the board for the MUSC Urban Farm and MUSC Arboretum, a Clemson Extension Master Waste Educator, and current chair of the Robert Lund's Group Sierra Club. Our other presenter today is Dennis J. Frazier. Dennis coordinates the advisory committee planning for the Charleston Medical District, representing MUSC and the CMD. In 2015, Dennis led the effort to create a Charleston Medical District Greenway. In 2018, he joined the city-led flood mitigation effort representing the CMD. He traveled with the city team to the Netherlands to participate in the 2 Dutch Dialogue work sessions in 2019. He was the MUHA administrator for facilities and capital planning, overseeing all facility functions, including building the Ashley River Tower and planning the new Children's Hospital. He is a West Point graduate with a BS in engineering and an MBA. Dennis and his wife, Mary, have lived in Charleston since 2004. And now I'll pass the presentation over to our presenters.
Well, good morning. I'm Dennis Frazier, and we welcome you to this presentation. I'd like to start with the Charleston Medical District began when we, in 2015, when we began meeting to discuss how the three, Roper, the VA, and MUSC could work on sharing space, public space primarily at that time, but later other ways that we could work together to solve problems that were common to us. And fairly early in the project, we needed to also include the city. And so the Charleston Medical District works together, has a steering committee which is made up of the leaders of Roper, the VA, Dr. Cole from MUSC, and the mayor. And then we have an advisory committee that is working on a number of issues for the medical district as a whole. This next slide talks about the flooding that we're dealing with in Charleston. And as John mentioned, we have been working with the Dutch Dialogue group and with the city and other areas of the city. And the way we determine the need for this is if you look at these three charts, it shows that sea level rise has been going on now for some time, but it has gotten more increased over the last few years, and which is evidenced by the flooding, which you may experience not only when we have hurricanes, which is when you think we would flood, but we're also having flooding and a number of high tide events that happen more frequently than they used to.
This slide shows multiple causes of flooding. The flooding is caused when we have increased precipitation. When it rains, the water is coming into the city of Charleston. It's a very difficult time getting out of the city because the city is such a flat surface. In this slide, you can see how the city is a very flat city without a lot of topography. So rainfall is carried out of the city through the storm drains, And that storm drain system becomes overwhelmed relatively quickly. The city is a very old city, so the storm drain system is also very old. We have antiquated infrastructure. The city of Charleston is working very diligently to work on that, and we'll show you some slides later to show you what they're doing. We also are affected by sea level rise, which you saw in the last slide. That has been going up. It's gone up over a foot since the 1930s. We also, during major storms, have something called storm surge. And that is when the water from the Ashley and Cooper rivers is forced into the city by wind and the strong currents of the ocean during a storm. We also have issues with the groundwater level and coastal erosion. And if a storm comes during a high tide, those storm drains can be easily overwhelmed by all of these actions happening at one time. So these are the highest tides recorded in Charleston. As you can see, we've got a 12-foot tide back in 1989. That was one of the highest. And then an 8.64 tide in 1934. This is a long range of time that these high tides are happening. And in these pictures, the top picture, you see a blue piece of tape on that tree, and that's showing the level of the inundation that we could have if the predictions are correct. That's a 3-foot level. And that is what is predicted in sea level rise for the city of Charleston by 2050. The bottom picture shows our now older children's emergency room. We've since moved that. But that is during a spring rain event. That is not a major hurricane. That is an event you can see cars are driving through it, people are walking through it. It's not an ideal situation for access to MUSC. So this shows the frequency of those high tides. So you can see here that in the 80s, we were having 9.3 events a year where we were above 7-foot mean low water. And that has been going up every decade since. And in the 2010s, we're now at 42.3 events per year. This is an extreme level of sea level rise that is and rain events that are causing all of these high tides. And this slide shows that the time of year is a concern. You can see from September to November, the number of events that we're having where we're flooding goes up dramatically. The flooding affects the entire Charleston Medical District. And in this slide, you see the red outline is the medical district. And the light blue, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but light blue is on B Street, Courtney Drive, got Earhart Street, got flooding on Ashley Avenue, a little bit of flooding on Calhoun Street, and definitely around Long Lake. So these flood areas are just during nuisance sunny day flooding. Now, these are major access corridors to MUSC for VA and the Roper. All these areas where you see the yellow arrows, those are the major access points to the medical district. And as you can see, just during sunny day flooding, we're already having problems with cars and pedestrians, bicyclists trying to access these 3 campuses. Then during a 10-foot storm surge, that would come during something like a hurricane. all this area that you see that's light blue in here is affected. And then access is potentially cut off to most of the medical district. You've got a few areas here and here at Roper, a little bit at VA, a little bit at Roper, and a little bit over here at MUSC that are high and dry. But for the most part, access to the district is cut off. These pictures show flooding events that have happened in and around MUSC. So we've got this picture here on Ashley Avenue. And that is a rainstorm. We've also got this picture that's showing a road closed with someone still trying to drive through it. And that is over on Haygood Avenue. Down here at the bottom, we have two pictures from hurricanes. One is Earhart Street. This is the lowest point on the MUSC campus. And this street serves both MUSC and Roper Hospital. And then this final picture shows inside the ground floor of the Ashley River Tower. And this is floodwater that's come into the ground floor of that building. Some other mobility access issues. We've got a nurse here at the top. She's walking back to her car at the end of a shift, and she's having to walk through floodwater. Right below that picture is a picture of our public safety. They are trying to get a doctor from one building to another building during a hurricane. And he's having to be taken in a boat. Down here at the bottom, we have a picture of a military vehicle. This is the South Carolina National Guard. They helped MUSC by bringing their vehicles down, and we used these vehicles to get doctors and nurses from the outer edges of our campus into the core buildings so they could do their jobs. And then this picture on the left top is one of our grounds workers, and they are along with some public safety officers, and the grounds worker was taking a patient to the hospital in this vehicle. And at the bottom, we have one of our engineering facilities employees. He is having to wade through the flood water. He is on Calhoun Street, and he was trying to service a building during the hurricane.
The cost and damage from these events, you can imagine, is extreme. Just from an engineering and facility standpoint, the cost and just to MUSC alone can be approaching $1 million. And we look at Matthew, Irma, and Dorian, and other ones. But the cost goes beyond that. It's the disruption of services. It's the rescheduling of patients or patients that can't get in. It is labor that has to stay at the hospital and not get home for a while. And in other cases, critical supplies and services can't get to the medical center. So when you look at that in terms of all of the medical district with Roper, the VA, and MUSC, we've been working with those institutions to determine what the cost will be. And at this point, we know it exceeds around $10 million or more a year, and that number is increasing because we're having more frequent flooding. So the cost is already high, and it's going up. The strategy that the medical district uses is the same as each of the institutions, but it's coordinated. And we're also working with the city. And in general, what you need to do is you slow the rain or the water down, whether it's coming from above in precipitation or it's coming ashore in a surge or tidal influence, whatever the reason is, you try to slow it down. You sometimes need to store it in it could be in a pond, a lake, it could be in a cistern, or it could be in the drainage system, but you try to store it. And then finally, when the tide system goes down and the high water event is receding, then you try to get rid of it, pump it back out, eventually onto the river and on out. we deal with it in terms of elevation. We need to elevate some roads and access points, walking points, to be above the flood area. Maybe not every road initially, but enough that you can get from the key points between the buildings of each institution and between the institutions themselves and from off campus. People coming from I-26 or from the crosstown or from James and John Island all need to be able to get to the medical district. Check valves, which we'll show you slides in a little bit, help control the tide water that water drains out, but you want to be able to stop it from pushing back up in through those same drain lines. We are in the process of completing deep tunnels, which help drain the water off and pump it to the river. We're looking at surge protection with raising the edge of the peninsula, perimeter type protection to knock down a surge. And then we're also working hard to plan and prepare how we organize and work together and have the right resources in place. And then to be sustainable, we need to be able to provide and deliver those services. We need to be able to have fresh water, food, and to keep the workers and the patients and the people that are in the area able to work and live. We need to have energy in terms of heating and cooling and electricity. We need to be able to get them to the medical district and then back out. The Dutch Dialogue is a term that represents a company that the city engaged a few years ago to help us plan how to deal with floodwater. As the mayor explains it, the Dutch Dialogue Group has been working on flood management in other parts of the country, and they were working with the engineers and the scientists in the Netherlands. And so the city of Charleston has brought over the people from the Netherlands and from the Dutch Dialogue Group here in America. We had two 5-day work sessions in 2019, which brought in well over 100 people and different agencies to help figure out what was needed and help create a plan for Charleston. And I would say that Charleston then divided into 4 major areas of focus. An area on Johns Island, an area in West Ashley, an area near where the Ashley River or the Cooper Bridge comes onto the peninsula, and then the medical district. This shows the drainage plan. These represent areas that drain. Calhoun West is an area that has a drain plan that's contemplated to begin in the next few years. Spring Street, which is called Spring Fishburne Plan, is a drainage area that is nearing completion, probably around 2022. And then there are some other areas which are more defined around the VA hospital, around the marina, and then also in the center of where these areas come together, called in Earhart Street. You may recall that picture that Christine showed where it was deep water. There's an extension being planned to connect to the Spring Fishburne project, and drain that area. When we catch the water, gives you an idea how water comes down on our buildings wherever they are in the medical district. Sometimes we have green roofs, or we have the ability to catch the water and store it into underground cisterns, or perhaps the vegetation helps absorb it. You want to have the land and the surfaces of walking and driving to be as pervious as possible so that water can get on through and be absorbed by the ground. But excess water can then flow towards the river, but we might catch it in a cistern, or in the case of a lake such as Long Lake, we might store it there. And then eventually it will get to the river. We're looking at the potential for Long Lake as an example to be made have more capacity, either by making it a little bit deeper or raising the edges. And then the last thing you see there is a barrier of some type that will stop a storm surge from coming ashore and doing great damage. That barrier might include a nice plaza. If you think of the High Battery downtown, where you have an area that is high enough to keep the surge of the water from coming in, but it's also a nice public space so people can walk along and enjoy it. In the medical district along Doughty Street, these pictures show how when we closed Doughty Street in 2017, we got it immediately for public use as a space to go to rest, to get some food, but also it will become a way of connecting north and south from the Ashley Avenue and the main campus of MUSC, the Horseshoe, over towards the Ashley River Tower on Courtney and the Children's Hospital. You see that elevated walkway there to the right of that top right image there, goes past Gazy's. That contemplates an elevated walkway, which solves one of our problems is when we have floodwater, people could be indoors and walk back and forth between the different institutions, not only up and out of the floodwater, but also a conditioned space so that you could even transport patients if you need to. This connection could also be connected to Roper and the VA eventually and serve us all. When the drainage of the medical district also involves this existing systems, some of which have been stopped up for various reasons. That they're old systems, of course, but they also might have debris or something in them. The picture on the left shows recently the city has engaged a company to come and vacuum out. These lines happen to be under the Greenway on Doughty Street, but the picture to the right shows these trunk lines, and if you look at that yellow one, that one is the one that's kind of between the VA and the hospital that serves Ashley River Tower and the new the parking garage that serves both of them. It has been cleaned out. The orange lines are lines which are planned to be done relatively soon, where they will go in and vacuum out those lines so they improve the drainage, and then beyond that will be more of the cleaning out in those other areas which are colored purple.
The medical university is planning to build a new pharmacy building, and that will be attached to the front of the basic science building. So this white area here at the top will serve as basic science, and the purple area will be the roof area that's looking down on new addition that will be built starting in 2020. And what we're showing here is that MUSC is planning, the construction is planning to have drain lines come off of the roof. That's these dark black lines here and on the right and on the left side. So we've got drain lines coming off of both sides of the roof. And those drain lines, and they'll come to this area that's sort of hatched. That is an underground storage area for water, and it's going to be on both sides of the building. That storage area will be able to hold the water that's equivalent to a 7-year storm or 55,000 gallons of water, and it'll store it underground. And eventually, when the system, the normal storm drain system, is able to handle it, that water will drain off naturally. So the other things that MUSC is doing, we have a tree policy where all of our trees that are equal to the total caliper inches of trees that are removed will be replaced. Right here, you can see we've got the front lawn of MUSC with our really old oaks, and trees really do take up a lot of water. They're a big part of our plan. We have, one tree can lift up to 100 gallons of water out of the ground and discharge it into the air each day. We are an designated arboretum, and we are a Tree Campus USA, and now we're a Health Campus USA. We are really working on our trees. And then we've got this area here that is over off of Cannon Street, and that is called a bioswale. And we've got trees in there that take up water. We've got other plants in there that take up water. And it's just an area where the water can flow naturally away from the streets and allow access to continue on our streets. And then at the bottom here, we've got a rock garden. And that rock garden allows all the water flowing down towards that drain to go very naturally out of the system and into the drainage system. We also are employing rain gardens. This is our first rain garden in our urban farm. And we're using natural plants here to take up water. And what happens is this bottom picture shows this roof line here drains into this cistern. This is about 350 gallons. And then that cistern overflows into the rain garden. We've got a whole connected system here in our urban farm, draining water away from our farm. Over on the right top, we've got a picture here, and we've got our rainbow row. And we do intend that pun. So all of the rain off of this roof over here does come down and into these rain barrels. So we are also capturing water there in our urban farm. The picture below right is a pervious pad. Our grounds crew is working on not putting down more impervious surfaces. So anytime they need to come up with a very flat surface, they're doing their best to make those surfaces pervious and drain water away from the campus. So we've got the city of Charleston working very diligently to help control tidal flow coming back into the city through the drain system. So we wanted to explain what a check valve is. Check valves are inside of the storm drain system. They're a system that works where water can flow out of the city and not be able to flow back into the city. So you can see here, this is water flowing through a storm drain, and the check valve will open one way, and it'll raise up and allow that water to flow out into the river. Now, when we have a high tide, the check valve works in the opposite direction. When the tide is trying to come back through the storm drain, the check valve stays shut and it will not allow that water to come back into the city. So that is how a check valve works. The city of Charleston is employing these check valves. All of these blue dots on this map here show where the city of Charleston is putting in check valves. And that is keeping the water from the rivers from coming back into the city. We've got two pictures here to show visibly what these storm drains look like. So here's a storm drain at low tide. This is the Ashley River. And as you can see, the Ashley River Bridge is back here in the background and the marina. And you've got a person here that you can see. So that gives you an idea of how large this drain line is from the city. So you can see the water is flowing out of the city. And it's a sunny day. So there's still water coming out. And then here at high tide, you see that drain line is completely covered over. So that is what happens in the city of Charleston. If we did not have check valves in the drain lines, that water could flow right back into the city of Charleston.
The elevation of key infrastructure is critical to be resilient, to be able to sustain yourself, whether it's a hurricane or high water. When we built Ashley River Tower, and more recently the Children's Hospital, it had all been planned with an energy plant that was elevated above ground. So if you've ever been or parked in the B Street garage, the end of that garage that's towards going towards the VA end has the energy plant, which serves the Ashley River Tower, the Children's Hospital, and also has capacity and size to serve the future third phase of the hospital, which will go where the fitness center is. In the main hospital and Children's Hospital, Storm Eye, in that area, their systems years ago were not elevated as high. So around 2015, 2016, Medical University Hospital Authority built this energy plant this picture shows, which is up above the ground, took use of every available space. You can see a part of it is even cantilevered out over the roof of the children's hospital side there, and provides the heating through steam generation, the cooling through chilled water. That steam is used not only for heating, but it can be for sterilization, for surgical purposes. It can be used in food preparation purposes. It has emergency power, and it has redundancy, so that which is required by Joint Commission for patient care, but it's also essential anytime you have people in the building that are trying to deliver care and academic and research services. So it has the ability to sustain itself through emergencies like that and through weather challenges. Next slide. Here's another example of elevation. Top left is over between the fitness center and Ashley River Tower, where that air handler and related equipment was elevated up so that it would be up and out of flood water area. The bottom left shows where drug discovery and bioengineering, when they were built, they were wisely raised up so that flood water down on Jonathan Lucas and President Street are down lower. The other street there is Haygood Street, going from the crosstown towards the Citadel, towards that action, and you'll see how flooded that is. In the future, West Edge project, which has already elevated some of its streets, it has a plan where this street can be elevated enough so that you can get on that street and move through it during high water conditions. These are the two deep tunnel projects. The red one is the Spring Fishburne project, which has been on many years now. I think around 2004 it began and is nearing completion. If you've seen over the years, the areas where they've been drilling these large shafts and round tubes that are going down in the ground, that's what is represented for water to be caught and pumped out to the river. The blue one contemplates an even larger system, which is called Calhoun West, and does the same thing. It will catch the water in those areas and pump it out. This is a deep tunnel. This is looking down vertically. This is a shaft that is planned for Earhart Street. You may recall when Christine showed a picture earlier where it was said it was a deep. Earhart's one of the lower points in the medical district. This shaft is being planned to connect to the Spring Fishburne project in the next 2 years, and will help increase the drainage in that Earhart Street, but it will serve out towards B Street, back up towards President, and out towards Courtney, and over towards Roper. All will be benefit from this. The drainage tunnels work like this. If you look to the left side, there's a shaft where water comes down, and then that goes down around 105, 110 feet to a horizontal shaft where the water goes towards a pump station, which is out near the Ashley River. We've got a photograph in a minute, but before we get that pump station is shown there, where the water stores in that, and then as the water rises, these pumps come on and kick and push the water out into the river. Next picture. The construction between the north and southbound lanes of the US 17 there, the crosstown, is where that pump station will be, and will pump the water out into that river there, which is the Ashley River. There's a rendering of the building when finished. The perimeter protection is an extension and an improvement over what you already kind of are familiar with. If you go to the battery, the high battery and even the low battery, is a coastal edge hardening so that the tides don't erode. And also, you may recall in the last couple of years, they've had tidal surge up in the North Carolina area, which did extreme damage to cities where the water came ashore in a hurricane and just did a lot of damage to buildings and all of their services and their facilities. That's the intention here. Is the Corps of Engineers has been studying this project now. They have a project they've done working with the city. It's called a 3x3, which is a 3-year, $3 million Corps engineer funded project. They're looking at a barrier that might go all the way past the Citadel to high ground, around the battery, and then back around up towards the Ravenel Bridge, the Cooper Bridge, to high ground to become a barrier. That's a multi-phase project that would be done over many years.
This is also perimeter protection. In the last slide, you could see that the study being conducted has a target completion date of fall 2021. It will take extra time to receive congressional approval and funding. It will take more time to design and construct. In the meantime, we will need to rely on natural perimeter protection. As you can see, this graphic from NOAA shows 1 square mile of salt marsh can store carbon, trap sediment, improve water quality, and improve habitat. Most importantly for flooding, it can be a natural barrier to waves. 15 feet of marsh can absorb 50% of incoming wave energy. It's also more resilient because the marsh can quickly bounce back after a storm or a flood. Again, while we're waiting on the Corps of Engineers flood risk management study, we can implement a natural perimeter. The South Carolina Department of Natural Resources received a grant that MUSC was very supportive of. They will be installing oyster beds in the area between the Coast Guard Station and the Ashley River Marina. Another oyster bed will be installed along the shoreline of Brittlebank Park. The oyster beds are scheduled to be installed in 2021 and 2022. They will reduce wave action and help provide perimeter protection to the entire medical district and the western edge of the city of Charleston.
Another part of planning and preparing Notify is to look ahead of how we can deal with connection between the buildings of MUSC, but also between the Medical University, Roper, and the VA. This view here is you would be standing on Courtney Street at the intersection of Courtney and Doughty, right in front of Ashley River Tower. To the left is a elevated walkway that would connect from Ashley River Tower down into you're going out just down the side of the Gazeys and on down towards President Street. The library is way off in the distance. To the right side there is where now is the parking area of the Roper Medical Office Building. This contemplates the complete closure of Doughty in the future. Right now there's only one lane closed, but in the future the other two lanes would be closed. It would be for public space, of course, but it would be elevated so people could walk, elevated in the sense that the surface where the ground is would be elevated a few feet where it wouldn't flood. You could have a water feature there that's nice and conducive to being peaceful for patients and family and employees, but also if you look underground, it could be a cistern that could store water, perhaps as much as 1 million gallons of water could be stored there. And then that red arrow shows how the water that is brought down from the elevated garage and roofs of buildings around, run off from the park itself into this cistern, and then could be pumped over to Long Lake. Next slide. Long Lake in that top center picture, the blue portion there, is part of the medical district, and it's across Calhoun Street. It used to be really just an extension of the Ashley River, and there was a marina there. And years ago, when they built Lockwood, that Lockwood runs along there and became a barrier, and so it became a lake. It's a lake that we want to use for not only public purposes, because it's a nice place for, again, for families, patients, visitors, employees, people who live here to enjoy. But it's a place we could pump flood water as necessary to store it until we can the flooding goes down. It's about a 10, 11 acre lake, which means it holds between 2 and 3 million gallons for every foot. So if we can At low tide, we would be able to, with a new flood check valve there, let the water drain out of the lake down to low tide level and then stop it from coming back in. And then when it rains and we have a storm, we could use that lake to fill it back up with flood water to help drain other areas of the medical district. The bottom left there just shows how the lake would be improved. It would not just be a lake for storage of water, but we contemplate that it would be a nice park area. You could walk around it. You could perhaps get a boat and go out and row or sail. Next slide. Master planning is already underway with MUSC, with Roper, the VA, and the city. In fact, the master planning at MUSC has gone on for many years, and they're updated every 4 or 5 years. And MUSC is in the process of doing another review. The same is going on at Roper, and the VA is nearing completion of their review. What we want to do is work with the plans that are Shawn Jenkins Hospital, the VA, the West Edge plans, the city's plans, look to the future of what we might see with access off of the crosstown into the medical district and between us and West Edge. The needs along Courtney Drive and how the emergency departments, patients can come to the 3 medical centers, public intermodal, the public transit, the light rail, or we've seen more and more vehicles that are, or bicycles that people are using, all different ways to improve access to come and go from the medical district. We look at B Street and Bravo, which could be changed in the future, which will also improve access coming in off Lockwood, off the crosstown. The medical district will be looking at a master plan that summarizes and contemplates all of the members' plans, but also the connection between them and how we can improve and work together.
So, in the process of planning and preparing, we also notify. At the top right, you might have seen the hurricane awareness flyers that are put out by our University Emergency Management. What they're trying to do is notify as many people as possible when any sort of emergency is coming. This flyer happens to be for hurricane awareness. As of right now, as you know, our emergency management employees are working very hard on the COVID-19 virus. They use email and text, MUSC websites, flyers, and apps on phones. It's very important to communicate when we have emergencies of any kind. On the top left, you can see that we've been preparing for our next hurricane. We have these 2 vehicles that can help transport employees through floodwater. We are prepared to do that now, so we don't have to rely as much on the South Carolina National Guard for that in the future. We also, when storms come, put up barriers at our buildings to prevent floodwater from coming into the building. At the bottom right, these are employees from our maintenance department. They're closing up the Hollings Cancer Center. I believe that was in preparation for Hurricane Dorian. In the picture on the bottom left, those are our hospital and university leaders gathered working diligently throughout storms. They work together to make sure that everyone is safe and that the hospital can defend in place during a storm. Energy management is very important to building resilience to flooding because it helps build our climate resilience through reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. MUSC has been working very hard over the past many years to reduce the amount of energy we use. We performed one performance contract in 2009 where we saved over $2.5 million a year and many kilowatt hours of energy. We're currently in the midst of our second performance contract. That will have another savings of $2.6 million a year and many more kWs of energy that will help build our climate resilience. We've got a study going on right now looking at something called combined heat and power. If we implement that project, what that will do, we'll take waste heat from an engine and use that heat to heat up boiler water. That process is 50 to 60% more efficient in using energy. That will help us be more resilient during any sort of emergent event, like a hurricane, and it will also reduce our energy use. The buildings at the bottom right are bioengineering and drug discovery building. They were built to the LEED Gold standard. What that means is those buildings were built to use less energy from the minute they were opened. They have high E windows that are very insulated. They keep the sun out and the air-conditioned air in the summer. They have very thick walls and very thick insulation. They use much less energy because they have a better roof system that keeps the heat out of the building. The new Sean Jenkins Children's Hospital was built to LEED specifications also. That will be a LEED Silver building. That building is very efficient in lighting. When you go into that building, there is a lot of natural light coming in with beautiful views. All the lighting is LED lighting, so that lighting is very highly efficient. It has high efficiency chillers, boilers, and generators. It also has very efficient windows and efficient insulation. It's a very beautiful building, and we're very proud of that building. We're also working on transit with the Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester Council of Governments. They are building something called Low Country Rapid Transit. They're in the process now. That will bring lots of new employees from the Summerville and North Charleston areas right into the medical district, faster than they could drive. They will have a very quick, efficient ride on that system. It will improve their commute to and from the medical district. CARTA right now has several park and rides set up from Summerville, James Island, Mount Pleasant, West Ashley, and North Charleston. Thousands of our medical district employees ride CARTA Express right now. We have taken a lot of cars off the road, and we're saving a lot of energy. All that transit right now is free to our employees. It's a good benefit for our employees. They can relax to and from work. They can be happier employees as a result.
Here's some resources. We've got the National Weather Service, the Charleston Harbor Tide Gauge, so you can see for yourself every day how the tide is looking in the Charleston Harbor, and it has data showing the tide going back to the 1930s and I think to the 1920s. I think it started in 1921. And then the City of Charleston Flooding and Sea Level Rise Strategy. That is a document that put together about a year ago, and that goes over all of the strategies that the City of Charleston is employing to help decrease flooding within the city. And then the Dutch Dialogue's final report is online that has a section that focuses just on the Charleston Medical District. And coming soon will be a Charleston Medical District flooding strategy pamphlet. And a lot of the slides in this particular presentation actually came from that pamphlet. I want to thank you for joining us today. Just trying to end off with a little bit of humor here. So you see this water pump here. This is the old way of doing things. And, you know, you saw in our slides a lot of very new way of doing things, drainage systems and the check valves and all of that. We are working very diligently to keep MUSC, Roper, and VA high and dry, and we will continue to do so throughout the next years and working with all of our partners to do that. Dennis, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, thank you for your attention again. And you can see that a lot of work continues despite the current situation with COVID-19. That we're working at a distance, but the floodwaters are going to continue to rise no matter what we do. So we appreciate your attention and welcome any suggestions or any comments.
Thank you, everyone.